Inside a busy downtown cafe, a black man calmly orders coffee, but the manager erupts, shouting, "Get out now," in front of stunned customers. Moments later, the truth flips the entire cafe upside down, because that customer, he's actually the new owner. And what happens next turns humiliation into redemption. Mr. Daniels stepped into Bean and Brew Cafe, a place that once smelled of home and dreams. The gentle aroma of roasted coffee beans and caramel syrup filled the air, just like it did years ago, back when it was his. He wore nothing fancy, a fitted grey t-shirt, slightly faded blue jeans, and sneakers that had walked 100 quiet miles. He looked around, his eyes tracing the familiar wooden walls lined with framed black and white photos. Each picture, each grain in the counter's wood, whispered memories of his past ownership. But now, nobody recognized him. The cafe had changed. The staff was new, and so was the energy. Colder, louder, more commercial. Behind the counter, a woman in a navy blue blazer and stiff white shirt barked orders. Karen Whitmore, the cafe's manager, commanded the room with a sharp tone that could slice through silence. Her lips moved faster than the espresso machine. "Double latte for table 4. And Emily, wipe that counter again. I can see smudges from here," she snapped. Emily, a young barista with kind eyes and a hesitant smile, nodded quickly. She noticed Mr. Daniels standing near the door, his hands in his pockets, simply observing the place. There was something peaceful about his presence, almost too calm for the chaos around him. He approached the counter. "Good morning," he said, his voice even and warm. "Can I get a cup of black coffee, please?" Emily smiled politely. "Of course, sir. Small, medium, or large." But before she could even reach for a cup, Karen turned sharply, her eyes narrowing at Mr. Daniels like he was out of place. "Excuse me," she interrupted, her tone harsh. "Do you have an order pickup or are you lost?" Mr. Daniels blinked, momentarily confused. "I just wanted a cup of coffee." Karen crossed her arms. "We're not serving loiterers today. If you're not ordering something specific or don't have an online order, I'll have to ask you to leave." Emily froze mid-step, her hand hovering over the coffee pot. "He was ordering," she whispered, almost too quietly. But Karen ignored her. "I've had enough of people walking in here, wasting time, making customers uncomfortable. You're standing too close to the counter. Step back." The cafe fell silent. A few customers at nearby tables looked up from their laptops. The sound of milk steaming stopped. Mr. Daniels took a slow breath, his patience unshaken. "Ma'am, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted a simple cup of coffee. I don't care what you used to do," she cut him off, pointing toward the door. "You need to leave now. Before I call security." Emily's eyes widened. "Karen, please, he's not—" "Quiet, Emily," Karen barked. "I run this store. You don't question me." The tension thickened. Mr. Daniels looked around. Every pair of eyes was on him, some curious, some uncomfortable, others quietly ashamed. He could have shouted. He could have reminded her that he built this cafe from scratch years ago before he sold it to the company that now employed her. But he didn't. He stood tall, his voice steady but heavy with disbelief. "You're really asking me to leave for ordering coffee?" Karen's jaw tightened. "Yes. People like you come in, take up space, and make paying customers uneasy. I'm not repeating myself." That phrase, "people like you," hit him harder than he expected. It wasn't the first time he'd heard it, but hearing it here, in the very place he created, cut deep. Mr. Daniels exhaled slowly. "All right," he said softly. "If that's how you treat customers, then maybe it's time someone takes a closer look at how this place is run." Karen smirked, assuming she'd won. "You can complain all you want. The owner's in another city, and I run this branch, so please, don't waste my time." He didn't say another word. He just nodded, turned around, and walked toward the door. The cafe went dead silent. Only the chime of the door echoed as he stepped outside. Through the glass, Emily watched him pause on the sidewalk. He looked back once, not in anger, but in quiet sadness. Then he pulled out his phone and made a single call. "Yeah," his voice lowered as he spoke into the phone. "It's me. We need to talk about the Bean and Brew on 7th Street. Something's gone wrong here." He ended the call, slipped his phone into his pocket, and walked away. Back inside, Karen rolled her eyes. Finally. "Some people just don't belong in nice places." Emily swallowed hard. "Do you even know who that was?" she asked quietly. Karen shot her a glare. Doesn't matter. He's gone. But as the door slowly swung shut, the barista whispered under her breath, "It's about to matter. A lot." Outside, Mr. Daniels disappeared into the crowd, calm but determined. The city buzzed around him, unaware that within the next 24 hours, everything inside that cafe would change forever. And when he came back, he wouldn't be asking for coffee. The morning crowd at Bean and Brew Cafe began to fade, leaving only the soft hum of jazz music and the hiss of the espresso machine. Karen Whitmore leaned against the counter, her arms crossed, satisfied that she'd handled the earlier situation. To her, it was just another day managing her cafe, keeping things in order. She didn't notice Emily Carter quietly glancing at the door, replaying what had just happened. Emily couldn't shake the image of the calm man's expression, how he hadn't argued, hadn't shouted, just looked disappointed, like someone who'd lost something personal. "Karen," Emily began cautiously, "maybe you were a bit harsh. He just wanted coffee." Karen turned, glaring. "Emily, I told you before, don't question my judgment. People like that don't come here to spend money. They come to sit around, ask for water, or use our Wi-Fi. I've dealt with enough of them." Emily frowned, uneasy. Still, he didn't seem like that type. Karen laughed bitterly. "Oh, please. You're too naive. In this city, you can't let people walk all over you." The bell above the door chimed again. A delivery man entered with a box of new coffee beans. Karen grabbed the clipboard, signing quickly. "Finally, something useful," she muttered. But at that exact moment, the phone behind the counter began to ring. Karen picked it up, distracted. Bean and Brew Cafe, downtown location, Karen speaking. A crisp, professional voice answered. "Good morning, this is Henderson from corporate. I'm calling regarding a complaint that was just escalated directly to the executive office." Karen blinked. A complaint? From who? The voice on the other end hesitated slightly, then continued. "From a Mr. Daniels." The color drained from Karen's face, though she tried to sound composed. "Oh yes, that man. He came in earlier and, well, there was a misunderstanding. He didn't order properly." Henderson's tone turned firm. "A misunderstanding that involved you threatening to call security on a customer who asked for a cup of coffee?" Emily froze mid-wipe, eyes widening. Karen stammered. "He was acting suspicious. He didn't fit the usual customer profile." There was a long silence. Then Henderson said slowly, "Ms. Whitmore, I don't think you understand who you're talking about. Mr. Daniels isn't just any customer." Karen frowned, confused. "Then who exactly is he?" The voice replied, measured but unmistakably cold. "He's the founder of Bean and Brew Cafe. He built that store 10 years ago before selling it to the corporation that employs you. And from what I was told, he just paid your cafe a visit, for sentimental reasons." The phone nearly slipped from Karen's hand. "Wait, what? He owned this place?" "Yes," Henderson confirmed sharply. "And your behavior was completely unacceptable. The executive board has already been notified. Expect an inspection team by tomorrow morning." The line went dead. Karen's hand trembled slightly as she hung up the phone. The air around her felt suddenly heavy. Emily stood silently, watching her manager's confident posture crumble. "Karen," Emily said softly, You yelled at him?" Karen turned away, her voice weak now. "No one told me who he was." Emily took a slow step forward. "You didn't need to know who he was to treat him decently." That line cut sharper than she expected. For the first time that day, Karen couldn't find words. That afternoon, the cafe's atmosphere shifted. The regulars whispered about the scene from the morning, and by evening, even the delivery guys had heard the rumor. The old owner came back and was thrown out. Emily couldn't focus. Her hands shook as she poured cappuccinos, guilt gnawing at her. She thought of calling Mr. Daniels herself, to apologize, but how could she? She didn't even know how to reach him. Just as the sun began to dip, the cafe door opened again. Karen stiffened instantly, her heart racing, half expecting Mr. Daniels to return. But instead, a tall man in a dark suit stepped in, holding a folder embossed with the Bean and Brew logo. "Good evening," he said formally. "I'm Mr. Lewis, from the executive office. I'm here to assess the incident from this morning." Karen forced a smile. Of course, please, have a seat. I can explain everything." He raised a hand, cutting her off. "That won't be necessary. We've already spoken to Mr. Daniels." Emily glanced up sharply. You did? Is he okay? Mr. Lewis nodded slightly. He's fine. In fact, he wasn't angry. He was disappointed. Said the cafe had lost its soul. He wanted to see how it was doing after all these years. Karen's eyes darted nervously. I didn't mean any harm. It was just a misunderstanding. Mr. Lewis opened his folder and looked at her coldly. That misunderstanding might cost you your position. The room went silent. He turned to Emily. You were on duty when the incident happened? Emily nodded. Yes, sir. Good, he said calmly. Then you'll be here tomorrow morning when Mr. Daniels returns. Karen's breath caught. He's coming back? Yes, Mr. Lewis said, closing the folder. He wants to meet the staff personally. And I'd suggest you prepare yourself, Ms. Whitmore. He's not coming for coffee this time. That night, long after the cafe closed, Karen sat alone at one of the tables, her blazer folded beside her, staring blankly at the espresso machine. For the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar, fear mixed with shame. Every rude order, every dismissive tone, every customer she'd snapped at, it all replayed in her mind like an unforgiving film. Meanwhile, across town, Mr. Daniels sat quietly in his office, overlooking the city lights. His assistant entered. Sir, the team's confirmed your visit for tomorrow morning, she said softly. Mr. Daniels nodded. Good. Let's remind them what this cafe was built on. Respect, not arrogance. He looked down at an old photo on his desk, himself standing in front of Bean and Brew Cafe years ago, holding a cup of coffee and smiling proudly. Tomorrow, he would walk through those same doors again. Only this time, he wouldn't be the man who got thrown out. He'd be the man deciding who stays. The next morning dawned with a strange stillness over Bean and Brew Cafe. The sun filtered through the tall glass windows, painting golden patterns on the wooden floor. Yet, beneath that calm surface, tension rippled like electricity in the air. Everyone knew what was coming. Karen Whitmore, usually sharp and commanding, was a shadow of herself. She had arrived an hour early, cleaned the counters twice, polished the espresso machine until it gleamed, and even straightened the photo frames she once ignored. But none of it eased the unease curling in her stomach. She kept glancing at the clock. 8:45 a.m. 10 minutes until he arrived. Emily Carter was quieter than usual, preparing the register. She didn't speak much, but she watched Karen's every move. There was no gloating in her expression, just quiet observation. You should relax, Karen, Emily said softly. Panicking won't change what happened. Karen shot her a look, her voice brittle. You think this is funny? If I lose this job, I lose everything. Emily sighed. I don't think it's funny, but maybe this is the wake-up call you needed. Before Karen could respond, the cafe door opened. The sound of the chime seemed louder than ever. Mr. Daniels walked in, calm, composed, dressed simply in jeans and a dark blazer over his grey t-shirt. The same man who had been told to leave now carried an air of quiet authority that filled the room. Behind him followed Mr. Lewis, the corporate representative, holding a tablet and a thick file. Every whisper in the cafe stopped. Even the espresso machine hissed into silence. Karen straightened up immediately, forcing a smile. Good morning, Mr. Daniels. Welcome back to Bean and Brew Cafe. I want to apologize for yesterday. It was... Mr. Daniels raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. His voice was calm but firm. Let's not start with apologies, Miss Whitmore. Let's start with honesty. She blinked. Honesty. He nodded, stepping closer to the counter where he had stood the day before. Yesterday I came here as a customer. I didn't announce who I was because I wanted to experience this place as any ordinary person would. I wanted to see if Bean and Brew still carried the warmth it was built on. He paused, his eyes sweeping across the cafe, the same walls, same wooden counter, same smell of roasted beans. But what I found, he continued softly, was arrogance, judgment, and disrespect. Karen's throat tightened. I was just trying to protect the business. There have been issues with people who don't fit the profile, right? Mr. Daniels interjected, his gaze steady. That's what you said, isn't it? Karen looked down, her voice trembling. Yes, sir, but I didn't mean... You did, he said quietly. And that's the problem. He turned to Emily. You were working yesterday as well, weren't you? Emily nodded nervously. Yes, sir. Mr. Daniels softened his tone slightly. Tell me what you saw. Emily hesitated, glancing at Karen, who looked at her pleadingly. But Mr. Daniels's eyes were patient, reassuring. "She asked you to leave," Emily said finally. "Even though you were polite, you just asked for coffee. She assumed you didn't belong here." A few customers in the cafe murmured among themselves. The truth was out. Mr. Daniels nodded slowly. "Thank you, Emily." He turned to Karen again. "You see, Ms. Whitmore, when I started this cafe 10 years ago, I didn't care if my customers wore suits or sneakers. This place was built on connection, on giving everyone a space where they felt they mattered." Karen's eyes glistened. "I lost sight of that. I admit it." He looked at her for a long, silent moment, then exhaled. "Losing sight is one thing. Destroying what others built is another." Mr. Lewis cleared his throat, stepping forward. "Mr. Daniels, as per company policy, you have full discretion regarding staff action at your original franchise." Mr. Daniels turned toward Karen. "What would you do if you were in my position?" Her voice broke. I'd fire me." He didn't respond immediately. The room held its breath. Finally, he said quietly, "You're right, but I believe in redemption more than punishment." Karen looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" Mr. Daniels gestured to Emily. "From this moment on, Emily will be the acting manager of this branch." Gasps rippled through the cafe. Emily froze, wide-eyed. "Sir, me? I don't know if I—" "You've shown more heart and integrity in one day than some do in a year," he said kindly. "You'll learn. I'll help you." He turned to Karen again. "As for you, Miss Whitmore, you'll stay, but in a different position. You'll work under Emily for 3 months. Consider it an opportunity to rebuild what you broke." Karen swallowed hard, tears welling up. I don't deserve that chance." Mr. Daniels nodded. "Maybe not, but neither do the people we hurt when we act out of ignorance. That's why we give them coffee anyway." The cafe was silent for a long time. Even the customers, who had come for caffeine, sat frozen, listening to the lesson unfolding before them. Finally, Karen wiped her tears and whispered, "Thank you." Mr. Daniels gave a faint smile. "Thank me by changing how you treat people. This cafe doesn't serve coffee, it serves community." As he turned to leave, Emily followed him to the door. "Sir," she said softly, "you really are different from most owners." He smiled. "I didn't start Bean & Brew to make money. I started it because I grew up in neighborhoods where no one thought we belonged in nice places like this. I wanted to change that." Emily's eyes glistened. "You did, and you still are." Mr. Daniels looked back once more before stepping into the sunlight. Through the glass, he could see Karen wiping tables, not out of fear but out of humility. Customers smiled, Emily worked with new confidence, and for the first time in a long time, the cafe felt alive again. And as he walked down the busy street, a quiet smile touched his lips. Bean & Brew had its heart back. The following weeks at Bean & Brew Cafe were unlike anything anyone had seen before. The story of the incident spread across the city like wildfire. Blogs wrote about it, social media buzzed with outrage, and videos of Mr. Daniels's calm confrontation went viral under the hashtag coffee and respect. But inside the cafe, something deeper was happening. A transformation. Karen Whitmore, once the commanding and arrogant manager, now started her mornings humbly, mopping floors, taking orders, smiling awkwardly as she tried to adjust to her new role under Emily Carter's supervision. It wasn't easy. Customers whispered, some pointed. But every day, Karen kept showing up, determined to earn back something she'd lost long before that day, her humanity. Emily handled the cafe with surprising grace. Though young and inexperienced, she led with empathy. She didn't bark orders. She inspired. The staff respected her because she listened. And every once in a while, Mr. Daniels would quietly stop by. He never announced himself. He'd just walk in, order a coffee, sit by the window, and observe. No drama, no grand speeches, just presence. One Friday morning, about 3 weeks after the confrontation, the cafe was bustling. The morning rush was in full swing. Karen worked behind the counter, carefully steaming milk, while Emily handled the register. "Large cappuccino for Rachel," Karen called, setting the cup down. Her voice carried less bite now, just calm professionalism. Emily smiled approvingly. "You're getting good at this again." Karen chuckled softly. "I used to think I was above this work. Turns out this is where the soul of the cafe really lives." Just then, the doorbell chimed. A familiar figure entered. The chatter softened. Mr. Daniels walked in, wearing his usual jeans and blazer, his face composed but thoughtful. Emily smiled warmly. "Good morning, Mr. Daniels." He nodded, glancing at the busy cafe. "Looks alive again." Karen hesitated before stepping forward. "Mr. Daniels," she began nervously, "may I speak to you for a moment?" He gestured toward an empty corner table. "Of course." They sat across from each other, the smell of fresh espresso filling the silence between them. Karen clasped her hands together. "I've wanted to thank you properly," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Not for sparing my job, but for showing me what kind of person I'd become. I used to think authority meant control, but now I see it's about care." Mr. Daniels studied her quietly. "People make mistakes. What matters is what they do after. I've been volunteering on weekends," she admitted quietly, "at a community center near my apartment, serving coffee, listening to people. It's different. I guess I needed to remember that respect isn't a transaction." Mr. Daniels's expression softened. "You learned faster than most." Karen gave a faint smile. "It's strange. The same man I tried to throw out of this cafe became the reason I started finding myself again." For a long moment, they sat in silence, not as boss and employee, but as two people who had both changed each other. Emily approached timidly. "Mr. Daniels, there's someone outside who wants to speak with you." He turned, and to his surprise, standing at the door was a group of reporters holding cameras. Behind them, a few corporate representatives in suits waited with smiles. "Mr. Daniels," one reporter said as she entered, "the community's been inspired by how you handled that discrimination incident. The story's gone viral. People are calling it a model for leadership. Would you care to say a few words?" The cafe went quiet again. Even customers stopped mid-sip to listen. Mr. Daniels stood, adjusting his blazer slightly. He didn't look for attention, but the moment called for truth. He spoke clearly, his voice deep and steady. This cafe wasn't built to make headlines. It was built to remind people that kindness is a language everyone understands. What happened here wasn't about punishment. It was about perspective. Sometimes the people who treat us worst are the ones who need grace the most. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of the espresso machine. He glanced at Karen. Redemption doesn't erase the past, but it gives meaning to it. Karen lowered her head, tears forming in her eyes. He looked toward Emily next. "And leadership isn't about titles, it's about humility." Emily showed that when she stood up quietly, without ego. Applause slowly filled the cafe, not just from the staff, but from customers who'd watched the transformation happen firsthand. Mr. Daniels smiled humbly, then turned back to the reporters. "If there's anything I'd like people to take from this, it's simple. Respect should never depend on someone's clothes, color, or status. The day we forget that is the day we stop being human." As the cameras clicked, Emily placed a fresh cup of coffee in front of him. "Black coffee, no sugar, just how you like it." He laughed softly. "You remembered?" "I always do," she said warmly. Hours later, after the reporters left, the cafe slowly returned to normal. Karen stood near the window, watching the city outside. "He didn't have to forgive me," she murmured. Emily, wiping the counter, smiled. "That's what makes it powerful." Karen turned to her. "You think I'll ever earn that kind of respect again?" Emily looked thoughtful. "You already started." Karen nodded, her eyes distant but hopeful. "Then I'll keep going." As the sun dipped behind the skyline, a new kind of glow filled the cafe, not from lights or decor, but from the people themselves. Bean and Brew had changed, not just in name but in heart. That night, as Mr. Daniels walked past the cafe one last time, he paused outside, watching through the glass. Inside he saw laughter, kindness and community, the very things he dreamed of years ago. He smiled to himself and whispered softly, "Now, it's truly alive again." Then, with quiet pride, he turned and walked into the city lights, leaving behind not just a cafe, but a legacy.